Thank you so much, Dr. Antoinette Nestor, and thank you especially for the work that you do with the Climate Law and Governance Initiative, in addition to your many, many hats on this issue. And I will reveal that Antoinette also serves as a local city councillor in the city of Cambridge. So we are doubly grateful for her work to address climate change, law and governance at all levels, right where it counts. Thank you, Antoinette. Distinguished colleagues, partners, and friends, thank you for joining us here in Bonn and online, those who are watching afterward, as we gather once again in the spirit of collaboration, capacity building, and commitment to the rule of law in advancing climate action. This event is actually, of course, part of a larger movement and a larger set of collaborations that has grown over time and recently discovered that what we do is even more necessary than ever. I'm partly Canadian, and I'm right now feeling deeply anxious about rule of law and respect for international law. And I think many in the room understand how that feels and have for many years. The journey we first started in the Climate Law and Governance Initiative in COP11 in Montreal, right after the Kyoto Protocol had entered into force, allows us to bring together legal professionals, academics, negotiators, and other institutions active in this field on so many levels to support the implementation of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, and now, after our gathering in 2015 in the Sorbonne, the Paris Agreement. Our theme today, it's about the law, reflects a collective conviction that climate change is not just a scientific or economic challenge, it's a question of justice, of capacity, of accountability, and indeed of law. Before we begin, I'm especially delighted to introduce the distinguished co-chairs who will be guiding us through today's discussions. Beside me is Advocate Pascal Bird, well known to many of you in this community for many reasons, but as legal executive director of the Legal Response International, she has long championed equitable access to legal support for developing countries, especially in climate negotiations. She's also a leading figure in providing pro bono legal assistance to negotiators across the global south and indeed beyond. I used to watch the work you were doing with admiration. I would also be very honored to introduce Professor Alessandra Lemon, a dear friend of many years and collaborator on many levels. She's president of the Environmental Law Commission of the Brazilian Bar Association of Rio Grande do Sul. You may have seen her last year, just after the floods in her city, talking to us about climate change loss and damage here in Bonn, very passionately. And the work that she's doing to help address this on a legal issue is certainly worth underlining and the deepest of our respect. She's also a member of the Federal Climate Change Commission of Brazil, our presidency of the upcoming COP, and her scholarship and legal leadership have advanced the field of environmental constitutionalism and indeed of climate law and governance in Latin America and beyond. Together, these two extremely distinguished women legal figures will be facilitating two short panels that bring together deeply experienced legal experts and negotiators working at the forefront of climate capacity building in these negotiations, in the work on the ground in the countries on finance, where there are many legal issues that are starting to come up, and of course in the implementation of climate law and governance to deliver on the broader aspirational sustainable development goals. And if we don't deliver on that sustainable development commitment, of course, we risk losing all progress that we've already made, not just on climate change, but in so many other areas. So each legal tool we share, each law we strengthen, and each young jurist that we train brings us closer to a world that is more sustainable, more equitable, and more resilient. And I especially appreciate all of you. I know many of you from our democratizing education courses online or from the different events we've done over the years. I'm so pleased that you could come and join us together today. and that we will be able to have a discussion on these issues. Our first expert panel is called Enhancing Legal Capacity for Climate Negotiations, and Professor Alessandra Lemon will chair it for us, because speaking is Advocate Pascal Bird, together with Dr. Montserrat Madriaga, and if he is in the room, Advocate Gabriel Capaca. And if he is not in the room, then we will make do, as we always do in these situations. Over to you, Professor Alessandra.
Thank you so much, Marie-Claire, for this exceedingly generous introduction. I would only add that I'm also a proud member of the CISDL community and the legal fellow of the CISDL. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first panel of the afternoon, Enhancing Legal Capacity for Climate Negotiations, where speakers are Pascal Bird, Executive Director at Legal Response International, Dr. Montserrat Madriaga, Senior Lawyer at Legal Response International, and Advocate Gabriel Capaca, Deputy Director General and UNFCCC National Focal Point at the Sierra Leone Meteorological Agency, Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. We have three guiding focal questions for today's first panel. So we have invited our experts to answer three basic questions. What are the most critical legal capacity gaps constraining participation of highly climate vulnerable countries in climate negotiations? So the second question that we are proposing to our speakers is how can innovative legal support mechanisms level the playing field? And finally, how to build ambition for adaptation and mitigation through negotiations. So without further ado, Advocate Bird, the floor is yours.
It's on. Is it on? Hello? Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you very much, Alessandra, and a very warm welcome to everyone. Very pleased to see you all today. As Marie-Claire explained, so Legal Response International, our organization, works here at the negotiation, supporting developing countries, delegates from developing countries that lack legal support at the negotiations. And we do some other work, and I will talk about it a bit more. But just perhaps to start, just as an example, to sort of illustrate when we're talking about the law and gaps in critical gaps that countries face. I was just a few days ago talking to one of the delegates that we support, who is from an LDC countries, and she was just relating to me that she had been just coming out from a negotiation room where she was with her country and also supporting her group, etc. And they were trying to advance a position. And there was another group in the room that was advancing a different position, and that was coming up with lots of legal argument to support their position. She and her group, her delegation, her group did not have any lawyer on their team, and it meant that they couldn't immediately react. They couldn't really challenge any of these assertions that were made, and they were feeling very frustrated. So I'm just raising that just by way of an example. This is something that we have come across a lot, and it illustrates really some of the challenges that many developing countries face. And when I say many developing countries, yes, it can be LDCs, it can be states, etc., but also some other countries that may not be technically part of that group, but often do not have lawyers on their team. And these countries, as many, may aspire and work towards actually achieving ambitious outcome in the negotiation, but the lack of technical support is one of the challenges, but an important one that they often face, and that can impede this objective. Law doesn't make the headlines in the negotiation in ways that other topics do. Yet, as if you're lawyers and if you're not lawyers, but you probably perhaps know already, it entirely permeates this process. How the negotiations are conducted, the governance of the regime, etc., etc. And the challenges that negotiators face can sometimes be a lack of understanding, of awareness of how the law underpins the process, which means that they do not necessarily think that it is absolutely key to have a lawyer as part of the delegation. Sometimes it's not an option because of resource challenges, etc., etc. But sometimes we have certainly found situations where actually it's anywhere a legal issue, a legal problem suddenly surface, that the awareness about really the importance of it comes across. So we see as part of our role raising an awareness about the importance of the law, how the law can strengthen arguments, political arguments, etc., and ultimately how it supports inform and better decision making, and ultimately the integrity of the process. So at our organization, we have observed that although there is a lot of training that covers for negotiators, that covers negotiating skill, diplomacy, introduction to thematic areas, etc., etc., there is less attention given to the law and to legal skills and the importance of the law. So we found a gap there, and so we have developed a course, a legal training course, which is designed to address these aspects and to equip negotiators with the basic relevant legal knowledge and legal tools and practical tools to enable them to navigate this process more efficiently, more confidently, and contribute more effectively to them. So the course, I'm going now to talk a little bit more and start very briefly about the course, and then I let my colleague Montserrat to go over. So the course is designed in such a way that it can be tailored to particular audiences and also particular needs. So one of the options of the course is what we call the essentials, which can be included as a complement to other training programs. And it can be delivered virtually, it can be recorded, etc., etc. It's basically, we'll start with an introduction, an example, how to again emphasize the importance of legal implication in the process. It covers the legal architecture of the UNFCCC regime, concepts and different degrees of bindingness and legal terminology, with again example to illustrate what we are talking about. The different mechanisms for review and compliance that are built into the treaties. And then more generally legal and procedural aspects around COP agenda, the rules of procedure, the potential outcome of the COM, etc. And then we finish with a practical exercise on text interpretation based on current negotiating text, so that hopefully by the end of it, the participant will have acquired some basic tools and knowledge to be able to analyze and draft legal text. And I will leave it at that. I think there will be a Q&A session afterwards, so happy to expand on it necessary, but I'll leave it to Montserrat to expand on that.
Thank you, Pascal, for highlighting the importance of the legal profession and lawyers in particular in climate negotiations, and for your hard work in promoting climate conscious lawyering, even though, as you aptly put it, the law doesn't make the headlines. So thank you for this, and over to Montserrat for her comments.
Thank you. I hope you can all hear me fine. Can you all indulge me and raise your hands if you are a lawyer in this room? Really good, mob. Really good. Yes. The reason I'm asking is because Pascal was reflecting on how, of course, the delegations that we work with, being from all sorts of developing countries, sometimes lack lawyers in their delegations, but also sometimes they have lawyers in their delegations. It's just that these lawyers have been, I don't know, negotiating adaptation for many years or working in different departments. They don't, and maybe they don't have the role of a legal advisor in their delegation. So even if you have, a couple of members of your delegation who are lawyers, we have found that understanding this process from the legal perspective is really, really important. Because we also provide legal advice as in an ad hoc form as requested, having negotiators go through this training makes our work much easier, because if the question, the legal issue comes up unexpectedly, then we need to sort of draft this advice and share it, and that takes a bit more time. But if the negotiator already knows a little bit about perhaps the CMA role and functions in regards to the constituted bodies, maybe they will not need this advice, or the question is going to be more precise to a specific body. So this training intends to build that knowledge, and, as I like to say, these boxes where then they can put the bodies, the functions in place in these categories and understand the underlying rules more clearly, which is very empowering. And so I'll also would like to share an example or an anecdote. Yesterday evening, we were walking with towards a restaurant, of course, it was very late, with one of the lawyers who helped LRI during the sessions, a lawyer coming from the private practice, who's giving his time to support our work. And he was having a chat with a very experienced negotiator, non-lawyer. And so she says, as a lawyer, how do you see these negotiations? And he said, well, it's really clear to me that the law is everywhere. It's permeating everything. But negotiators act as if it wasn't until something literally explodes in their face, and then there's panic or madness. And of course, because at that point, negotiators who are worried about developing indicators for adaptation or keeping 1.5 alive or making developed countries deliver on their financial obligations are facing issues that they were not expecting. So, as Pascal was saying, our legal training covers, rules of procedure, the climate treaties, but we put a special emphasis on governance and text analysis and drafting. So let me go briefly into these two to give you more clarity on what am I talking about here. In this session, let's go to governance first. In this session of the SBs, parties have to deal with negotiations on changing the governance of a constituted body to a different governing body. These negotiations are on moving the adaptation fund, which is currently under the COP, to the CMA, right? It's currently under the CMP to the CMA, right? In this case, these negotiations on the adaptation fund would usually be covered by finance negotiators, which means a certain professional background, etc. And so negotiators finance negotiators for this session had to answer questions like, what does it mean that the CMA and the CMP are the governing bodies for the adaptation fund? This sits in the adaptation fund board that before were divided between Annex 1 and non-annexed countries in a certain proportion, are going to automatically be transposed to developed and developing countries in the same proportion? Is this going to affect the representation of groups and countries in this board? Moreover, is non-annexed countries the same as developing countries, or is there a difference? And would the functions of the CMA and the CMP be the same in terms of governing the adaptation fund, or would this change? In this case, they had time to prepare, so some of them brought these questions in advance, others are only facing this now. But also questions like this might come unexpectedly. Last year, during these SBs, the US legal advisor brought a proposal to developing countries on adding the gender negotiation stream to the CMA, which is under the COP now. They didn't know how to react to that. What are the implications? So that fear of, making a mistake caused a reaction, and the G77 immediately said, we're not accepting this, full stop. They went into the COP, the issue emerged again, and this issue stalled progress on the negotiations for extending the Lima Work Program, which is actually the gender program. And so instead of talking about that, they were talking about COP CMA. In the end, the decision that extended the Lima Work Program has no reference to the Paris Agreement because it is a COP decision. In our training, we would clearly explain that yes, these two treaties are independent treaties, but connected. The COP is the governing body of the Framework Convention. The CMA is the governing body of the Paris Agreement. However, the Paris Agreement is here to implement as well the convention. I could say, and a CMA decision could make many references to COP decisions or to the UNFCCC convention, and the other way around. A CMA decision could make references to the framework.
So 1 minute.
Okay,
to wrap up.
That's okay. I'm wrapping up in any case. So these are the sort of issues, and then moving on briefly to text. How we approach text and analysis and drafting in this training is that we use real text that is going to be draft text that is going to be used in the next session. For example, now we use the GST text on procedural issues and the NAP national adaptation text that both were going to input these negotiations. And so the participants could go through the text and think and respond questions such as, since the preamble has interpretative functions, could you identify a preferred language or particularly important elements in the text? Is the text establishing a relationship between the Framework Convention and the Paris Agreement? Are parties mandating on request or requesting actions from constituted bodies or external institutions? And so after going through the text with these questions, they would know what actually each option entails in terms of governance and legal issues. Ultimately, according to the feedback that we've received, the participants feel much more empowered, and they also feel that this process can go back to them as a party-driven process because they understand their role and the role of the CMA and the CMP in this process. So that's what we've heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Montserrat. And I would like to highlight the point that you made with regard to negotiation training, because when we discuss enhancing legal capacity beyond building capacity on with regard to climate law, there is the need to definitely the need to enhance capability to act on a negotiation setting. So thank you for this. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Advocate Gabriel Kapaka. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Our last panelist of today's first panel.
Thank Thank you very much for giving me the floor. And I'm happy to listen from the lawyers in the room because I'm not a lawyer, I'm a scientist. But firstly, I think when it comes to negotiation, I just want to share firstly, what are the challenges that we faced? And also going forward, maybe how can we come up with some of these actions to try to solve some of these challenges? Of course, colleagues have already mentioned of the training being delivered, of which Sierra Leone, we're happy to have benefited from those trainings. I think also in the year to come, we're also going to benefit a lot more. So from my side, I've been part of the process since 2012, negotiating. And of course, definitely right now, I coordinate science agenda item for the LDC countries. So with my experience, I think when it comes to negotiation, it's not just a one-side fit. It's a kind of like a threefold I see. Because one, you need to have the legal background. And then also you need to have, for example, the policy skills and also the scientific skills, science, because most of what we discuss has to do with science. So if you have the science skill and then you lack the legal background, then becomes a constraint. You know, and most often from the side of the LDC, just like any developing countries, normally what we do is like when we send in our colleagues into the room to negotiate, if they face some difficulties, we have lawyers. But sometimes they have to send that information to us, maybe via WhatsApp, via email, before you respond to them. But the good thing is, I think there are several countries where you have one negotiator that have all of those skills. You have the scientific background, you have the legal skills, and also you have those policy skills. For me, I think I've learned to be a legal person because I've been in this negotiation. I know what the shall means, I know what the may means, I know all the flexibility. So I think going forward, we need to really look into this to see that we can build capacities. We normally say LDC countries, but I can say that it's not only LDC countries. There are other developed and other developing countries that are faced with several constraints. Because there are times you as a negotiator when you're in the room, when someone makes a kind of like a submission, you know that is not a negotiation, submission. It's a kind of maybe just an advocacy, in what we are doing. So for Sierra Leone and also for others, I think what firstly I would try to call on maybe to be strengthened going forward is the tailored training that has been done, and also access to real-time informations. Because if you are negotiating, definitely you need to know the historical addition that have taken place several years back, and then also what are the emerging informations that are available so that at least you can make the right decision. Because I believe even when you build someone capacity, it's not only for them to come and participate, but rather for them to be part of the decision making, then to shape, for example, what the conclusion could be going forward. And also, I think in doing this tailored training, you can try to do a kind of a focus training because, for example, if you try to train someone that is negotiating, say, mitigation, it's more of science that is in there. Because you're talking a lot of science within, they are talking about the carbon dioxide removal, talk about the NO2, so that can shape us. And then you can bring us on legal implications. You can honestly, I will tell you several years back when I negotiate, there are times when we start discussing text. I will see the word, then I ask myself, what am I going to say there? Because you see the may, you see the shall, So I think we need to have those tailor-made training. And of course, also for the lawyers. And for us to have lawyers in our teams, I will tell you, for most countries, we think that when they say climate change negotiation, it's science-driven. Because if you check back, let's say from the Rio itself, most of the people that were negotiating were people that have background in meteorology and weather. Except later, I think when it's evolved later in the days, now you have people coming from the environmental sectors and now have legal persons. So I think we also need to do a kind of a whole lot of sensitization with our ministers, because in most countries you have ministers, that has to make the decisions for those that can form part of the team. And also in some countries, I know for others, some countries, we have also our colleagues that are in the legal field. They also shy away from coming into what we are doing. I think this has to do with a lot of orientation, because if you understand that, climate change is not all about science, we also need you so that we can make meaningful decision in this area. And I think also the last one that I want to touch on, I think going forward is to see a kind of a South-South cooperation. And that is like experience sharing. And I'm saying this because when we negotiate, mostly people do negotiate based on the reality, sometimes on the ground. People negotiate based on their country specific. I would say negotiating to protect your wealth. Let's say Sierra Leone, we have oil and gas that are discovered, and then he asks me, say, we need to close that. Where LDC, it will be difficult for us to make that decisions. So I think it's good for us to have that South-South corporations, people to understand that if we don't make the right decision now, in the next 5 to 10 years to come, of course, they're going to have some great, of course, destruction when it comes to climate change. I was talking when I was coming just with the security. I say, this is my first time to witness such temperature in Bonn. It has never happened. The way it's hot, this one is normal for us in Africa, you know. So this tells us that climate change is real. So I think to conclude this one, we know that capacity constraints is real, and we are being faced with that because countries have team delegations, less experts, and also there's a need also for us to look into the three folds that I've just explained. People to have skills in, for example, the science of climate change, the legal part of climate change, and also to look at the analytical part of climate change. And also going forward, I think I'm so happy with the training they're offering. We need to really go further with this. I remember the last time we spoke to our minister. My minister said he wants to be part of the training, and that was impressive, you know. Yeah, you know. And then even they're trying to see that people that are at the top need to be part of this training. So in as much as they are coming in, so we need to fill out the training. So if you're going to be training for those at the top level, let's be specific. What are the information they need to know? They are not going to sit with us to negotiate, and they want for us. Let's also try to see what are the trainings for the technical people. I think if we do this, I think that could really help us going forward. So with this, I will talk for the rest of the day because I happen to be a negotiator and also the lecturer, but I'll stop here for now. And then the other questions, I'll be happy to supplement on that. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Gabriel, thank you for adding your perspective as a scientist. I personally believe that we still have a long way to go as far as science and the law dialogue goes, and I'm happy that we're here today doing just that and adding to that effort. So I want to thank our panelists. We're going to wrap up this first panel. We're going to have time for Q&A at the end. So over to Pascal, who is going to share our second panel today. Thank you.
And we'd like to ask if the panelists who have just given their first ideas can stay along the first row, because we will have you come back up for the Q&A, as I'm sure you've stimulated a great deal of thinking.
The concept, the QR code.
Yeah, thanks, Marie-Claire. So it's my pleasure to introduce the members of the second panel now, who I will ask to come and join us at the table. So we have Dr. Ayman Sharkaoui, apologies for the pronunciation, who is the director of the Hassan II International Center for Environmental Training, a coordinator at Mohammed VI Prize for the Climate and Sustainable Development, lead counsel CISDL, vice chair of IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law. I will also ask Professor Leonardo de Camargo Sutil to join us. Thank you. Professor Leonardo is PhD LLM program coordinator at the University de Caxias do Sul. And finally, last but not least, I will invite Advocate Hafiz Khan, dear friend, to come and join us as well. And no, there's no space, so you will. There's a chair. There's a chair. Just can't see it. Right. Okay. Sorry. You to come and join us as well. No. Come here. We're going to squeeze. Dr. Hafiz Khan is director of the Center for Climate Justice in Bangladesh. He's also co-chair of the EXCOM of the Water International Mechanism on the Loss and Damage. So I will now introduce the speakers. We also have some guiding questions, which we will ask the speakers to focus on as part of their address. The first one was how to build capacity, for legal innovation that can unlock climate finance at scale, delivering sustainable development worldwide. Then the other question is how can legal framework on all levels be strengthened for climate action, and how to scale up capacity to implement international climate commitment. It was very important to look at implementation as well. So I will first give the floor to Advocate Chakoui to start us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Apologies, I have to run back out after my intervention to handle some ongoing issues, but I'm very happy and delighted to be part of this panel, quite a full panel indeed, with many friends, whether in the panel but also in the room. So to address the questions, from my perspective, legal innovation is not only a matter of lawmaking, as important as that is. It is also about empowering legal systems to not be barriers, but be enablers of ambition and trust. To unlock climate finance at scale, we need clear, stable, and enforceable legal environments that offer both investor confidence and social, environmental, and human rights safeguards. Legal innovation, therefore, must be at the center of our thinking when it comes to that. Climate action demands coherence across legal levels, local, national, regional, and international. We must translate international commitments into domestic legislation through national climate laws, sectoral regulations, and enforcement mechanisms, integrate climate considerations into constitutional, administrative, financial law, etc., ensuring legal predictability and accountability, promote multilateral governance mechanisms, enabling municipalities, regions at all levels to act while aligning into national, regional, and global objectives. Legal framework should also be effective, capable of responding to evolving climate science. We mentioned climate science before, just in the previous panel, and enabling dynamic implementation of NDCs and long-term strategies. We need to invest in interdisciplinary legal expertise and continuous dialogue between legislators, jurists, economists, law students, practitioners, and environmental scientists. Legal framework have therefore a central role, both when it comes to ambition and action. They help draw the full picture of what needs to be done, what is possible, and how to turn that possibility into a reality. Scaling up capacity while recognizing that legal implementation is only as strong as the institution and people behind it, I would like to share with you three priorities. Invest in legal education and training, including targeted programs for judges, lawmakers, negotiators, and not scientists. I'm an engineer first by training, then I'm training to law, and civil servants, especially in the global south, and if I may say, as much in Africa. I'm African, so I always like to put that bit of priority there. Strengthen institutional capacity for legal drafting, compliance monitoring and enforcement, with technical assistance and peer-to-peer exchanges. Develop regional and international networks that facilitate legal cooperation, jurisprudential consistency, and access to shared resources, such as legal toolkits and climate justice case law. Good news is that that's exactly what we do through the IUCN World Commission Environmental Law and the Climate Law Governance Initiative, among others. Indeed, we strive to build a robust ecosystem of legal capacity grounded in equity, intergenerational justice, and climate resilience. A recent example of that is the fourth World Environmental Law Congress that I was very happy to host at the center. Other examples include the great work of the Early Oil Specialist Group of the IUCN World Commission Environmental Law and the Climate Law Special Adjustment courses that the Climate Law Governance Initiative has been hosted alongside COPs for quite a few COPs by now. So I'm left here. Thank you very much, and with apologies, I'll need to rush back out very shortly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chakoui. I think you have made some very important points here about how the law and robust legal frameworks are important, how they can be enabler, and how predictability and accountability, etc., are essential really to attract investments in the country and to And the point that you made about legal education as well is, of course, one that is very dear to many of us, as we have already spoken about. So I will move on to Professor Leonardo de Camargo Sutil. Over to you.
Thank you. I'd like to congratulate the organizer of this event, Inspector Pascal Bird, Professor Wilson Benjamin, and Professor Combiné for this kind of attention. Also, I'd like to congratulate my colleagues, Alain, Fish, and Lena. Regarding what our panel is on enhancing legal capacity for climate change and action for SDGs, I would like to address the relationship between the climate change and notions of what we can call the ocean's rule of law. In my view, international adjudication can foster legal capacities concerning the climate finance. In particular, I would like to draw my attention to the role of the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea in this regard, especially concerning the advisory opinion submitted by persons on forming legal capacity for climate finance. The advisory opinion of the tribunal highlights some controversial points regarding the climate change legal regime in enhancing legal capacity for climate finance. The International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea recognizes the scientific dimension of the oceans. Legal regime referring to EU resolutions, IPCC reports, IMO reports and strategies. In the advisory opinion rendered by the tribunal, and quote, climate change represents an existential threat and raises human rights concerns. End quote. The tribunal refers directly to UNFCCC Article 2, objective on the stabilization of the greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere. Also, it refers to the definitions established in Articles 1, Paragraph 2, 5, Article 3, Article 4 on the general commitments for all parties to the UNFCCC. It's quite a progressive decision of the tribunal. Also, it has made many references to the Kyoto Protocol, the Paris Agreement, and to the IMO regulations and the strategies, such as the 2023 IMO strategies on reduction of GHG emissions from ships. Jurisdictional issues can play, in my view, a significant role in shaping legal capacities by courts and tribunals. Concerning specifically climate finance, it is interesting to notice that it has provided us with some insights on how finance flows consistent with the pathway towards low GHG emissions and climate resilient development is another aim of the Paris Agreement, according to Article 2, 1C. Also, the tribunal mentions that Article 9.1 requires developed states to provide financial resources to assist developing countries with respect to both mitigation and adaptation measures in continuation of UNFCCC obligations. Yes. Thank you. It will provide us an interesting view on the relationship between the ocean and the climate change regime, considering Article 202 of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea on scientific and technical assistance to developing states. And quote, it's evident that scientific, educational, and technical assistance entails financial implications. End quote. Regarding the protection and preservation of the marine environment. To conclude, I would like to say that the advisory opinion rendered by the Tribunal, the International Tribunal for War Officials, can help us in shaping a more legal capacity framework for climate finance and specifically action for SDG 14, life below water. Thank you very much. Thank you. Excellent, Leo.
Thank you very much for raising what is a really, really important aspect of the advisory opinion there and linking it with the climate change regime. I think indeed that it has a very important role to play in shaping, as you said, the capacity of lawyers and tribunals, etc., and being hopefully utilized in the context of the negotiation here as well. So yes, so thank you very much for highlighting and making all those points. I will now pass over to Advocate Pakistan.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to highlight the importance of legal capacities to access the climate finance and to take action at the national or local level. So let us think about the loss and damage to address. Colleagues, you all know that we established the Fund for Responding Loss and Damage in Sharm el-Sheikh. Now our transition committee worked very hard throughout the year in 2023. Luckily, I was one of the transition committee member. And finally, we agreed on the governing instrument in Doha, Dubai. Now the 26 members of the board, they are trying to develop the modalities for disbursing and access the loss and damage fund. Now challenge, hopefully next fund board meeting to be held in Philippines next first week of July. We are going to develop the modalities, how to access the fund. Last meeting, fifth board meeting, we agreed on the Barbados implementation modalities, and we initiated the startup phase, and we agreed to disburse 5 to 20 million US dollar as a startup phase for the country readiness. So this is the time to take preparations at the national level, how to access these financial resources and how to take action with these financial resources. So, you know, in the Fund for Responding Loss and Damage, we agreed two-pronged approaches. One is trigger-based, second is the programmatic approach. In terms of trigger-based, you know, soon after an event, we need to take immediate actions to support the vulnerable communities. So then what would be the channel? What would be the institutional mechanism? What would be the legal structure to channel the resources immediately soon after an event like floods or cyclone? So that's the issue. Now we need to think about innovative institutional structure, a legal approach, so that we can channel these resources to the victims or vulnerable communities. Second, we need to think about the programmatic approach, particularly considering the slow onset processes. We need to develop short-term, mid-term, long-term plans and programs. Colleagues, you know, here as SB62, we are conducting the third review of the Washer International Mechanism, where we are trying to identify the coherence, coordination, and complementarities among three constituted bodies within the broader loss and damage policy landscape. Colleagues, you know, the Washer International Mechanism, under this mechanism, there are two constituted bodies. Executive Committee, I'm also a member, co-chair now for this executive committee, another advisory body for the Santiago Network that aims to catalyze the technical assistance. Finally, the board for the Loss and Damage Fund. So it's a critical challenge to ensure the coordination and coherence among these three constituted bodies so that we can access the financial resources, we can access the technical resources, also we can access the policy guidance from the EXCOM. Now this is the time to go back home and to design our legal and institutional architecture so that we can access these resources available at the global level. We all know that current geopolitical context gives us a challenge for climate finance, but still we need to explore again with innovative ideas to access the limited available resources on the global level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hafiz. You have, I think, really very well illustrated how important the law is and how it is important, of course, in this process at the international level. You've talked about, indeed, the coordination between the different bodies and the establishment of the loss and damage fund, etc., etc. But also how important, indeed, very important it is also when you then talk about implementation at local level, establishing the right institution and legal structure, etc., to enable access to finance to those communities that most need it. So again, some really good, I think, examples there of yes, how the law permeates really so many different aspects. I think we are going to close here for this panel, and I'm going to hand over to Marie-Claire and Alessandra take over for our final panel and Q&A. So we will first of all invite some questions for the floor, if there are any. And we have for that, how many minutes do we have? We have about 5, 10 minutes. 5, 10 minutes for questions. And then we will talk about the invitation and the launch of the Climate Law and Governance Initiative. And I will leave it to Marie-Claire to do that afterwards. And yes,
I'd like to invite the panelists from the last panel and also Leonardo and Paige to come and join us. We need one extra chair.
I can see.
Yep, on that end. Because of course, if you have questions, we want them to be able to answer.
Yeah. And before you go, just to, it's just lost. I was just going to say that the QR code there is takes you to the concept note about the legal training that we have developed. So if you're interested in finding out more, have a look and obviously also come and talk to us.
There we are. It's just put up the QR code. Thank you, Carter. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So we're very happy to take some questions from the floor. We've had a very rich set of 2 panels. The first one looking at legal capacity for negotiations, the other looking at legal capacity for finance and action in the countries. And we see already a tentative question at the back. I'm going to call on our colleague from Bangladesh, Kazi, and then right behind us, an extremely charming individual in a white and pink outfit. There we are. Do what I can. And then I'll turn to maybe one other person as well. Yes, please. The gentleman with the glasses and the blue shirt. Please introduce yourself. As you can probably guess, I don't want to refer to you as the person in the shirt.
Okay. This is Kazi. I work with Friendship NGO Bangladesh. My question goes to Advocate Hafiz. That is, indicate to get access to the loss and damage fund trigger and programmatic approach. You know, the data statistics is very difficult at this moment and across the world, and to prove climate impact is not that much easy. So define trigger always a challenge. There are some intervention related to disaster reduction which will trigger decide to release fund or not. And always, there are some confusion because the trigger fix according to the scientific data sometimes, never match with the real life situation. Again, programmatic approach, did you mean the adaptation approach? And or what else he indicates? Finally, there's a big question, the management of the fund by World Bank. Why not is handing over to the civil society? Thank you.
I'm going to ask Carter if she can take the microphone to the second question, and then the third, and then we'll turn back to the panel to answer. I can see that Hafiz has already made note of your question, and maybe others might also. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for the two very interesting panels. My name is Catherine Blanchard. I'm with the Canadian delegation. I know some of you on the panel, so nice to see you. So my question goes mostly to the panelists on the first panel, but of course everybody is welcome to chip in. I think this legal course is absolutely amazing. I think it's an amazing initiative. I formerly was a university professor. I know the importance of education, so very good. One thing that I think lawyers in climate negotiations, but also negotiators, I'm sure, struggle with is the amount of documents to deal with. Sometimes the answer is, was there language about this? And then the language can be found in this one COP resolution from COP 12, from 20 years ago. So I'm wondering whether this is something you address in the course, and if so, how? And my second question, which is somehow related to that, is that even if you have a legal training, people who are legal advisors on delegations are government lawyers or sometimes come from the private sector or from academia. And even if you're trained as a lawyer, I feel like advising a delegation in the climate negotiations, more specifically, I've been to other negotiations before, and this forum here is absolutely unique, is completely different. It's a unique thing from any other type of ways that lawyers are involved in other sectors. I was wondering whether this is also something you address in the course. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great fun. And it's lovely to see you. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks. I'm Justin from the World Youth for Climate Justice, the campaign working on the ICJ advisory opinion. So I'd like to thank Leonardo first for bringing up the ITLOS advisory opinion. We think that the slate of advisory opinions that has come out and will be coming out this year will be pivotal in helping negotiators understand the legal basis for a lot of the negotiating points that they are forwarding at space and at COP. So my question is, to what extent are capacity building CSOs like LRI, institutions within the UNFCCC like the PAICC, and even states aware of the ICJ advisory opinion and thinking about how to utilize the opinion for the upcoming negotiations at COP30. So although the AO is now out, it's expected to come out by September, and it has enormous potential to provide a legal basis for many of what states are bringing to negotiations, like points on equity, ambition, best available science, and the relationship between the UNFCCC and other instruments in international environmental law. So basically, in your view, how can we leverage the advisory opinion to increase legitimacy and enhance capacity under UNFCCC political negotiations and processes? Thank you.
Three absolutely excellent questions. And the last one, I specifically would congratulate you. If one of our students in Cambridge had asked that question, they would get the top mark in that course, because it's pretty key in where we are going right now. I'm not going to speak about the book in front of me yet, but I think all of the lawyers on the panel just went, oh, what a great question. So I'm going to turn to Hafiz to answer, and then to Montserrat and to Pascal to answer to Catherine's question, and then to Leonardo, and also Gabrielle, if you don't mind us putting you on the spot. Leonardo can pass you information about the advisory opinion. So we're in a good place.
Thanks, Kaji. It's a very important question you raised. Actually, data, and data. Without data and information, we cannot communicate our needs, because last 30 years we are involved in this negotiation process with the top-down approach. But this is the time to take the bottom-up approach. We need to understand what are the needs of the vulnerable communities, what are the needs of the vulnerable ecosystems. So based on the needs, we need to communicate our needs, and global community can try to meet our needs. So at this moment, Executive Committee of the Warsaw International Mechanism, they are involved with developing a voluntary guide to collect data and to manage data and to inform the BTR, that is the under transparency framework biannual report system. So I'm happy to hear that you are also trying to collect data. I'm pretty sure Bangladesh government should be informed about your initiative. You can assist Bangladesh government to provide you data and information. Based on these, maybe next September, Bangladesh government can ask for $20 million from the loss and damage fund. Thank you.
And in terms of document management,
Yeah, can
which is certainly a skill.
Should I share instead? Yes, very quickly. We have, as part of the training, we do cover navigating the UNFCCC website, finding documents, document codes, what do they mean, where do they come from, how are they taken into account, and we have produced a guide. That one is on subtables at the back. That one, yes. Catherine, my colleague from PIPE negotiations, she's showing it, and it's online as well. So you are welcome to download it whilst you queue to receive a training.
I think that's an excellent answer. If you want to add anything.
No, not to that point, but I am happy to answer the second aspect of the question that you raised about the fact that this process is unique. And so even if you are a lawyer, it doesn't mean necessarily that you're well equipped to support. It's a very valid question. So the way LRI works is that we're a small team on the ground, but then we have a really broad network of lawyers who support us, who are on standby to assist. And these lawyers have a range of expertise because, of course, that's what's needed in this process. A lot of them are public international lawyers, and of course that helps. But it is true to say that when we started 15 years ago, the type of issues and the type of questions that were raised, many of the lawyers, part of the network, were able to answer it, even though they were not really necessarily particularly knowledgeable into this process and following it closely. Now it is quite different. And even though we do have a very broad network, some questions that we receive, we have only a handful of lawyers who actually have that depth of knowledge and understanding of the process in order to be able to answer. So what we're, in addition to the training of the lawyers from the countries we support, we're also thinking about how can we make sure that the lawyers that help us, those experts, stay upskilled, because yes, it is an issue. And then, if I may, go straight as well to the question about the advisory.
Can we?
Yes. I'll add something on that, but no, you
okay.
Go ahead.
Please go ahead.
So actually, it's a really important question, and I'd like to make some comment on that. Even if it's a complex one, we have, I think we should start by the ITROS advisory opinion on case 21. At that time, I was at the tribunal as a researcher. I think Catherine was there at that time as well. So regarding case 21, we have practical activities developed just after the tribunal rendered the advisory opinion. For example, the Sub-Regional Fisheries Commission, the commission submitted the request for an advisory opinion for the first time for the full tribunal, not just the chamber, but the full tribunal. So there was a question on jurisdiction regarding Article 21 of the ITROS Institute and Article 138 of the rules of the tribunal. So there was some issues on participation of states and other entities. It's
1 minute or less. You will.
Yes, international organization. So we have two examples. So, one, the capacity building process and workshops developed by the SRFC Commission, and also the United States NOAA agency developed workshops. Even if the United States is not a part of the convention, they developed a lot of workshops and capacity building process after the decision of the tribunal. So what will happen with the ICJ advisory opinion? We will have to wait for it. Thank you.
Just one last point from Gabrielle, because of course the tribunal asked for scientific information to be combined with legal in order to implement. Do you think that call will be reflected in the negotiations going forward by countries like yours?
Yes. I think that is something that we could accept. I also want to touch on the document management quickly. Of course, the course has been helping a lot more for document management. I will tell you what happened in operations, definitely for the negotiations. So what happened is like before every negotiations, the UNFCCC on their website gives you the different agenda with annotations. So before we come for negotiation, we look through the annotation, the description of each and every negotiation themes, and then thereafter we try now to page back historically what are the decisions in order for us to have a kind of a position before we come to the room. These are some of the things, methods we'll be using for document management. And also even during negotiations, if any party needs a kind of a reference that we are not really comfortable with, you have the right to ask them to explain that how it fits into the negotiation room. So these are some of the ways we've been using, I think, within the UNFCCC process. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I know we have an invitation that we wanted to conclude with, and I understand it's actually 3 invitations. I'm going to start with, of course, one of the most famous Brazilian lawyers who is hosting, together with her country, the COP next year. Later this year.
Yes. So to that end, I would like to take 2 minutes to talk about COP30 expectations, what's on everybody's minds for an agenda. And I, for one, would like to see a lot of focus on adaptation, because Marie-Claire recalled my rather passionate intervention last year on the floods in the south of Brazil. And I wish I could be here this year telling you a different story, but unfortunately I cannot, because it's happening again as we speak. So in fact, I may not even have an airport to fly back to from this conference. So we do expect a lot of focus on adaptation. COP30 has been dubbed by the COP presidency as a COP of implementation. So to that end, we're going to need finance. And so I think COP30 is tasked with a very important task, which is the Baku to Belém roadmap to 1.3 trillion. I think we're going to see a lot on forests and forest finance, so particularly the Brazilian-led Tropical Forest Forever Fund. We are expecting, I for one would like to see a lot of enhanced civil society participation, logistics permitting, of course. And we have, of course, a new round of NDCs. So there's definitely a lot of stake at COP30. And finally, I think we are at a delicate juncture in terms of both geopolitics, of course, and also from the impact of the fact that the aspirational 1.5 degree has been exceeded for the first time last year. But having said all that, and I do say this from a place of cautious optimism, I think this event today is this discussion that we're having is an extremely timely one, because we're going to need the law and governance community more than ever if we want to mobilize solutions and keep the Paris goals alive.
Absolutely, Alessandra. And I understand in terms of invitations, and I'd like to especially recognize Emily Morrison from the International Bar Association, who's in the front row. You will be speaking in an event on Monday, the first invitation.
Yes.
Beyond the broad one to Brazil and Belém.
Sorry, I got carried away and forgot the actual invitation, but yes, please do join us. Yes,
Brazil, I think
yes, of course. But please join us on Monday at this room, Emily?
Berlin.
The Berlin room at 4 p.m. For more legal discussions on building lawyer climate capacity. So.
And on the invitation front, Antoinette and Carter can help to close this event by also inviting you to a broader legal initiative and education. Please, Carter, Antoinette, the last 2 minutes are yours. I understand you have some slides.
Yes.
Yeah. You can use the microphone on the table if you want.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? All right. Yes. Okay. All right. So yes, basically this is very briefly just to tell you about the Climate Law and Governance Initiative, which started in 2005 at COP11 in Montreal. and is supported by the Center for International Sustainable Development Law, the International Law Association, and the IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law. And the idea is to help implement the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement. Now, each year, of course, we host legal briefings during the UNFCCC Bonn sessions, and we organize the Climate Law and Governance Day. And if you can just go to the next slide, since we only have a little bit of time, and we'll be calling for partners to join us on the day. It's going to be, we already have one confirmation that it's going to be co-hosted by the Universidade do Caxias. Is that what is right? Is that right, Alexander? But the university, and also we have a program of COP events, and most importantly as well, we have a climate law capacity pledge. And on the next slide, we have the QR code for you to join us. And just skipping this through this due to time constraint. And there. And yes, so the idea is to create a legal capacity. We're already on 6,000 plus. So and then Kathy, do you want to say anything else? We're just in time. Okay, so let's just move to the next slide then. And I think that's it. That's it. Yes, and Pascal, if you wanted to say anything at the very end.
Just to highlight, because Antoinette had to go past so quickly, during the COP, as Ayman Sharkawi mentioned at the beginning, there is on the Sunday in between week 1 and week 2 a legal specialization course. It's hosted with lawyers who, for different government delegations, helped write the Paris Agreement. And all of you, of course, are not just welcome, but also are welcome to spread the word so that others can achieve their certificate from the organizations that are co-hosting, including Cambridge and our Brazilian university partners. Ayman referred to it, and it certainly fits the theme of today. We won't go into more detail, but we will flag that many of the people on this panel are professors in the Democratizing Education for Global Sustainability and Justice program. And the Democratizing Education courses on the Paris Agreement, the SDGs, and the CBD run online. So you can earn a Cambridge certificate in 2 weeks if you sign up online. There are bursaries available for anyone who is successfully selected. And there are special partnerships with the country of Bangladesh, Liberia, Sierra Leone, that was the very first, and our colleagues from Pakistan as members of the Highly Climate Vulnerable Countries Forum to be able to especially provide training for law and policy leaders, current and future, on these climate law and governance initiatives. So we are not just calling for this work, we're actually doing it. And I think that is very important. And I think many of the people I see you here are also doing it. And that is the only way we're going to be able to move forward. We have to be ready to brace and to stand by the laws and the values that we've adopted already and to go further and make them more effective. That is going to be crucial with the NDC's rounds coming up. Turning to Pascal to help close.
Thank you, Marie-Claire. I think we are allocated time, so I'm going to be really brief to just thank all the members of the panel for their very rich and interesting contribution, as well as the question asker from the audience. I hope that you enjoyed it. I think we will be around for a little bit longer if you have any further questions and want to speak with us. But yes, many thanks to all of you, and yes, stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can we do a photo outside?
Yes.
With everybody who would like to be in it? You're welcome. And that will also mean they don't have so much mistakes. Emily, you're in the photo. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, we're if we don't do that, we get victims.
Yeah. Just take a picture of that. That's something here.
Yes.
Somebody analyzed that had to cancel a trip, but wanted to try and rethink.
So we just. Okay. Working on it. Working on it. Trying to get one of our nice.
Let me ask. Bonne opportunité.